Next up on the list, we have Heather from just down in Spokane, pretty close to us here. She is a counselor and actually uses the float tank as a tool in her counseling, which is really interesting and fun to see all the different applications of float tanks that are out there in the world, and is here to tell us a little bit about how the float tank can be used like that. And so I will pass it over to Heather.
First off, I wanted to thank everybody for coming, and I wanted to thank Float On for allowing me to speak at this conference, and for the Samadhi Company for supporting me in all my flotations endeavors. So it's awesome to be in front of a group of people where I can say, I really need a float, and you all know what I'm talking about. I've been at conferences over the past week and a half, and it just go to all these conferences, and I definitely need a float. So first off, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me and how I first got started in floating. And actually, the first place that I floated was in Portland. I was looking up something just new, something different, something I hadn't done before. I'm always trying out new different things, skydiving, whatever. Try different things. And I thought, what is this isolation tank thing about? And in my mind, I thought kind of the same thing that Glenn was talking about with the very beginning, the apparatus on your head. And I thought, oh, well, maybe you're locked in this tank with your thoughts. And as a counselor, I thought, well, how interesting. Well, what happens, what happens to your thoughts, when you get in there? So it was just kind of, I knew nothing about it. I didn't know the benefits. I didn't know anything about it. And I decided to come try it. And it was, just like Lee said, the most awesome experience that I've had. I had been doing so many different things to get rid of headaches and chronic pain, just so many different things. And I came and floated, and I found out I was able to move that pain around in my body, move it to different parts, and let it go and get rid of it. And I was like, wow, I have this much control over something like that, and I'm able to get rid of that on my own. There's really something to this. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of from a counseling aspect, what creates change in people and how you can help support that in people in your centers. So through kind of a meta-analysis that was done, it was done by Miller, Duncan, Hubble, and the book is called Escape from Babel, or there's another book that's called Heart and Soul of Change. These are the 4 factors that create change in people's lives. So the first one up there, 40% of change created in people's lives is the extra therapeutic factors. And what that means is everything that's done outside of the particular technique that you're using, whatever that client is doing between sessions, whatever that client is bringing so in my life, for example, it would be the fact that I was moving from a high-stress job to a less stressful job. I was doing a lot of different things, exercise, training for a triathlon, doing self-massage, just a whole bunch of things that I was doing, changing kind of thought about my chronic pain. I was changing just a whole bunch of different things that I was doing on my own outside of what the actual technique that I was using. So the second point on there is the therapeutic relationship, and that is the relationship between that client and the change agent, which would be you, or would be whoever's helping them through this change. And that's just a connection with that person. So example, you're going to a massage therapist, it's a connection with that therapist, it's that trust with that therapist knows you, and a complete feeling of being known. So that's what that 30% is. So the last 2 are the technique and hope. So 15% of change that is created is the actual technique that you use. So that's the actual model, the actual flotation tank. If you're using, in the therapy world, there's 400 plus. So cognitive behavioral, just so many different things would constitute as the technique. And the last one up here is 15% of change is created through hope, expectancy, and just the hope that things can change, the hope that you can create whatever change that you want. So these were developed through a meta-analysis over all theories, all of what somebody somebody believes, and through every different kind of technique of change. So it was just kind of a meta-analysis that how they came up with this. Let's see. So why counseling and flotation? So what we just, even with David coming up here talking moments before, it's just the learning and receptivity of being able to change those thoughts. The float tank allows you to deepen that experience, get more from that, retain more from that. So that's the first point up here. Also, many counseling theories and evidence-based techniques can be used with the float tank. You can use all sorts of different, like I said, there's 400 plus techniques that can be used. A lot of these things are even Googleable. You can look them up, and different things that people are dealing with. There's an evidence-based technique that will help out that specific issue. So, and the last one up here is that counseling techniques and flotation together are researched as beneficial. This is the study that I put up here is actually a 2011 study. It's from Sweden, and it's a preliminary study. We don't know the exact techniques that they used, and they used counseling separate from the float tank. So I think they had 10 sessions. So this needs to be researched a little bit more. They didn't have enough people in this particular study, but this is the direction things are kind of going. So I wanted to show you a little bit about the structure of what I do in my sessions. I mostly use the first one and the second one, and the last one, not so much. Usually if people just want to use it as a spa. But, so the first one is using counseling before the flotation. And I just find this really helpful. In order to create change in someone, as we just talked about, you have to have a relationship with that person. And to do that, if you're just sending them into the float tank and they get out, there's no relationship there. So this one is really important to get to know them, to get to know what they want to work on, to get to know, to be able to see in their face the feelings behind things. It's just really, really important. So let's see, an example. I had some examples for you to make it more. Let's see. So, for example, one of the clients that I see, he let's see. So let's see. One example I have. He wanted to know what he could do in the tank to kind of help him get through a tough situation that he was going through. He didn't necessarily want to talk about that situation. He said it was relationship, just a tough situation. If he's able to kind of restructure or think about what that situation would be like if he was okay about that situation, if he felt calm about that situation and fine about that situation, what would he be thinking? What would he be feeling? What would he be doing? And he said, he had the best float ever when he came out. He had been floating a lot before this, and then that one float, he said he just had the best float, and then he didn't come back again for another 8 months maybe. And when he did come back, he said, wow, I didn't tell you about that situation. It was a divorce situation, and I am completely happy right now in my life. I am completely calm about the situation. If she comes back to me, fine. If she doesn't, fine. He was completely happy and calm about that situation, and it was just amazing. It was really him who had done the work to get to that spot, though. The second part up here is floating during a counseling session, and this is where I'm able to talk through the microphone, which the Samadhi tank allows me to do, and help people work through those situations. So if somebody, instead of giving them an idea or something to work on in the tank, I would actually be working on that with them, or a skill building with them, helping them learn how to do stress management, stress reduction, or those kind of things. And you can work with those techniques on a cognitive, emotional, behavior, or spiritual level. And then the last one, of course, is doing the counseling after the session, or really listening and validating where somebody is at after a session. So let's see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that you can do to support people in counseling. I'm actually going to go back a couple frames here. So the number one thing, or the first thing, actually not number one, but the first thing that you need to do is to kind of identify what goals, what that person's motivation is to come in, what goals they have, and what they're actually working, want to work towards, or helping that client to figure that out. Because you can't help change something unless you know what that is. So, and then going back here, you want to support, the next thing you'd want to do is support the extra therapeutic values, since that is a lot of their change. So you'd want to, ask them, what they're doing between sessions that's helping them out, giving them benefit. You would want to allow them to realize that they're the one that's in control of their change, and ask them what they're benefiting from it, or what they're, how they can maintain this benefit in the future. The next point would be in the relationship factors. So you'd want to kind of validate where a client is at, really listen on their level, and not just kind of just be present with the client, creating that relationship, and using eye contact. Body language is a big one, leaning in, really listening to them, and being able to really feel where they're at, maybe repeating back the feelings. Many times they're not even aware of what the feeling may be. And then the next one on here would be technique, and we had just talked about that. And our technique we're talking about is the flotation tank. In my counseling, I don't always necessarily use the flotation tank. It's if it's in the best fit for them, or it's something that's really going to benefit them and where they're at. I try and structure my model to a best fit for the client, not for me. So, and then another important point that you can do with clients is really build on hope, or expanding that hope. I had somebody come in, she came in and floated. She had chronic pain. I think she was an ice skater and had gotten dropped years ago, but there was no physical evidence for her pain, but she's had chronic pain since then. And so she came in 2 or 3 times a week for weeks, and she's coming in a lot, and then she starts coming in a couple times a week or once a week, and she would just come in and float and leave, and she would talk about how, she's always had this pain, it's always going to be there. This floating isn't doing a whole lot. And so, what is that about? What does somebody really need through that? She really needed somebody to point out to her that she's coming in, she really has hope that things can be different, and kind of change that thought process for her. And then the very last thing, after all of that, would be for your own self-care and your own self-care, because if you aren't taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do, you're not able to do that for others. So that's kind of what I have, and it looks like I am close to out of time, so I will be around the rest of the conference. If you have any questions for me, you can always come up to me and ask them. So unfortunately, we don't have time for open questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you.